In this video we'll be assembling a DH67CF baseboard by Intel with an i3 2120T processor. We need to have the baseboard here. You can see from the box, and we're looking at the DH67CF. We then have a couple of RAM chips here. I've already put in, but I'll explain how we did that with the processor. Again, this is an i3 2120T. We use that because of the low profile needed for the case that we're using here. Then have an hard drive. I chose the Seagate 500 gig hybrid, and then we have the case that we'll be installing this into. It's a ITX based case. Not designed for a lot of frills, but it's very small and actually has a VESA mount on the back to attach to a monitor. The first step in the assembly process is to put in the processor into the main board. Dropping in the chip is not very complicated. I've already done it in this particular board, so I won't go back and do that. Putting on the fan, though, is a little tricky. There's these feet on the four corners, and the manual does not provide a lot of guidance on how that should work. On the far side, we'll see here that there's actually a power plug that needs to attach to the motherboard as well. So we need to be aware of the cable run, because again, this is a small case, so we don't want this dangling out too far, causing problems. So I mount the fan and the heat sink to be so that the cable is directly opposite of where we'll be plugging in, so that we can run the cable along the side and have plenty of run there and not have a bunched up cable. Basically, these feet, you can kind of see here where the line is running towards the middle of the fan. You want those little feet angled that way, all in line here, and then simply push them in until they click. And that's not very clear from the Intel guide, but you want to push them in all the way until they click. If you turn these 90 degrees, as this arrow indicates, that is to release them and remove out the assembly. So to have it actually installed, have these lines aimed towards the middle, line up the 4 feet onto the motherboard holes, and then go ahead and press firmly until you hear the click. The idea is to put the heatsink and fan assembly onto the motherboard before putting it into the case, so that the standoffs are not in place. The board won't flex as much, so you can really go ahead and press down firmly on these feet until the clicks happen. Second step is to go ahead and put in the RAM chips. Nothing special here. It is easier to put them on before assembling the board into the case. There's not a lot of room in a mini ITX format, so that helps quite a bit to get that out of the way. The next step is to do some work on the case. In this case, we're using a CI02 mini ITX case. It's really, again, not designed for any extra peripherals, no cards or optical drives. It's designed really just to use the main board and expose the main board's ports, and that's about it. In the box, I've already taken the 4 screws off for the case. It's a nice case, nice brushed aluminum. Actually, it feels like it's got some sort of a coating on it, maybe a nylon coating. It feels pretty durable. We've got the screws and such, power cable. And inside, though, for this particular main board project, we've got a couple things we need to prepare. And the first thing is to go ahead and remove the hard drive tray here, and then we're actually going to take these 2 fans and we're actually going to swap them because the leads for the indicators on the case are on this side, and we actually want them over here. And likewise, there's a fan power cable here that we actually want over here. So I'm going to disassemble these 2 fans off the back. There are 8 screws attaching the fans in place, so we're going to take those off, swap them, and rerun these cables to the opposite sides. And so we'll take care of that now. Okay, all we've done so far is to remove the drive tray off the top of the power supply, and then we've also removed all 8 screws from the back. So now these 2 fans are loose, and what that allows us to do is to go ahead and feed back through this cable and go ahead and remove it from its attachments, the feed that goes over underneath the fans, towards the fans, and then also these leads here. We're going to simply pull this away from the side of the case a little bit, slide these out, feed through here, remove them from under the fans, and actually simply redirect them. They attach into the case. See if I can get a good shot here. Right underneath the lock in here. I don't think that's coming out very clear, but right in here underneath this power switch is where those cables are running, and they actually attach into the front of the case to provide the lights here and here. So we're going to remove them from their chase here all the way over to here and simply redirect them in this direction, and I'm going to try to get them underneath this cable assembly here so that we can simply slide them over here and have them on this side of the case. Both of the fans have direct current leads coming from them, and they're both bundled up underneath the cables over here. When pulling the cables through and trying to loosen them up, in this case I'm going after this guy here, we'll see that it's still running underneath this assembly over here, which we'll go ahead and just simply push that through. But you'll find that each one of the fans has their extra leads sort of bundled up here with a little twisty. So each fan has its own lead. One lead is running to this power supply here. The other lead, this fan in particular, is designed to attach to the motherboard. So I'm going to leave the one bundled up that attaches to this power supply. I'm going to remove the twisty from this bundle here so that I have the full length of that cable. And this was the fan that was closest to the power switch. We're going to move it to be farthest from the power switch and then run its lead along this side of the case so we can plug it into the motherboard. And these here, this one here, was furthest from the power switch. We're simply going to move it over to be closest to the power switch. It is already attached to the power supply here. Okay, in this step I have now successfully run the leads, these motherboard connection leads, from this side, and now you can see where they're leaving the front of the case. They're now running underneath this assembly here. Just focus in there. Okay, and then I actually run them underneath the motherboard edge right here, just to kind of pin them down, keep them away from the open power supply here. So they're running just around that corner, and then I run them along the side, go ahead and put them into this catch here, and then push this catch closed a bit so that they're not going to move around too much. That gives us ample room now on this side. They're going to ultimately attach right in this area, so I don't really need as much room as I have here, but this gives us a good amount of space to go ahead and wrap these around and tie it back up with these guys. So we'll do that when we put the motherboard in. Now I'm going to run the power lead from the fan that I removed, this one here, and we're going to attach this fan onto the side furthest from the power switch, whereas it was closest before. We'll actually run this lead here back underneath, and along this side here it will ultimately connect over about in this area over here. So we'll do that now. Okay, we've now got the lead run along the side. We've basically reattached both of these fans. There are indicators on the fans suggesting their alignment and their positioning. This is the top of the fan. I've left the indicators so that we are running the fans in their designed position, although they are reversed. We could have simply moved the leads, detached the lead from this power supply, run it to the motherboard, and not move the fans around, but the fans had to come out to really make the repositioning of these leads over here simple. Otherwise, it's a bit of an exercise trying to fish them out from underneath the fans. So removing the fans makes that easier. So while we're already removed, I go ahead and swap their positions because I've got one fan lead that I had to pull apart anyhow. I've taken it down through here, run it underneath this cable here, and it's kind of loose. It'll tighten up here as we put it into position. Let's focus up there. And then through this little clasp here, which I've now pushed back into position as well. And now it is awaiting the motherboard because it'll be ultimately plugged in right about there. The next step will be to put the back plate on so that it's ready to receive the motherboard. It actually just presses into the back of the case here, and so there's not a lot to that other than just you have to put a little effort into wedging it because it is designed to be a pressure fit, so it will have to wedge in there. So we'll put that in position. Now I've got the audio openings on this side, and then working our way over here with the USBs and such. Okay, now the back plate is in position, so we'll turn this up on its end. We can see that it's ready to go. Got all the pieces firmly in there, simply wedges in there. And we've got our leads ready here, and we'll simply set them aside along with the main power cluster there, and this little one lead here that we pulled out from the fan, we'll set him aside. Now we're ready right in here to go ahead and put the motherboard assembly that we had prepared earlier. Okay, we've ever so gently slid the main board under these grounding catches over here. There's 3 of them, and so we just kind of wedged it in there, and it should line up correctly now with the holes on the stays off the case here. So we're good there. And if we look in the back, we'll also notice one little interesting aspect. Let's see if I can get the lighting a little better. These audio ports, of which there are many, should be protruding a little bit from the back plate. The DVI port will also protrude. The rest of them will be recessed there a little bit. There are 3 types of screws that are provided by the case manufacturer. These flathead round screws are what we will use for attaching the motherboard. There are some smaller screws here that we'll be using for the hard drive, and there's 8 of these, 4 of those, so we'll use all 4 with the motherboard. These 8, I'm only going to put 1 hard drive in, even though there's room for 2 2.5-inch hard drives. So I'm going to use 4 of those. I'll have 4 left over. And then the manufacturer also provides some screws here for the VESA mount, 4 of those to attach the entire case to the back of the LCD display. And so we're not going to use those yet. We'll come back to those. So these guys here are the ones we'll use for the attaching the motherboard. Okay, we have the motherboard in position. We're going to put in the 4 screws and then prepare our cables for where they're going to go. Here are the main wiring harnesses from the power supply that we're running along the side. This part here is going to go there. We're then going to take this lead here, and it will go over here. The 3 leads that we reran here will end up plugging into these little colored attachments down in there, right through here. And then on the opposite side, we'll be attaching the extra fan lead here to this red connector here. So I'll attach the 4 screws, cable in the leads, and be right back. Okay, motherboard is attached, cables are in. A couple of things of note. On these leads that were coming from the front of the case, there's one for the hard drive LED,
one for the power LED, which is the green one, and then one for the power switch, which is also red and black on the far side. It's kind of hard to see here, but there are only a few spots, and the nice thing about the Intel motherboards, they come with pretty good documentation in terms of the visuals, so we can see where these attachments are. And they're actually color-coded on the motherboard too, but I've got these plugged in so you can't see them. But you'll notice here that the colored wires are all faced towards the inside of the case. Those are the positives on those LEDs. Those are pretty important. The power switch, less important. This is just going to make or break the circuit. So it doesn't really, there's not really a positive or negative. It doesn't really matter how it attaches. But these other two LEDs, the green LED and the red LED, should be on the inside of the case. And the leads are marked on the Molex connector here, what they're for, and then the motherboard has color markings here to indicate where they're supposed to go, plus the documentation from the motherboard, plus the stickers that come with the motherboard. So it's all pretty well laid out. The only other thing of interesting note is that once I've got the main cable assembly, power cable assembly in there, and this other extra cable over here, I like to try to keep things tidy. Again, this is going to be a small compartment here, and once the case is on, everything will be pushed in here. So I use one of the zip ties that comes from the manufacturer to attach these two pieces together, so that when the case comes down, it'll press these into the corner here and keep everything here out of the way. What's most important is to make sure that this fan, when spinning, is not touching anything. Otherwise, you'll get a very annoying clicking sound as the fan is whacking against a wire. So that's not good. So we want to keep all the cables as far away as possible from that fan. Okay, coming through the home stretch here, we've now got all our cables in position ready to go, and now we're going to put the hard drive mounting tray back in place. I've attached one 500 gig hybrid drive. If you're going to use this as a regular PC, these hybrid drives are a very nice balance between performance and economy. Very, very fast, but they're not going to break the bank. And if you're going to use this device as more of a media player and attached behind a TV or something, you may want to go with the solid state drives and just go ahead and sink the money into that. They're not necessarily super expensive, but you don't get as much storage out of them. But in this case, this will be used as a regular workstation, so we're going to go ahead and use the 500 gig to give us a little bit of storage capacity. There's these nubs here. This will simply line up. There's one screw here and one screw here. There's room for a second drive. I'm not going to be using that here, but there are certainly situations where you might want to use that second drive. And I chose to put the initial hard drive on the I guess what would be the right side of the computer, basically the non-processor side, to try and distribute some of the heat. And most of the heat's obviously going to come from the processor, but there will be a fair amount of heat being generated off this drive as well. So I wanted to try to get those as far away as possible, as can be the case in such a small case, but still get those moved out of the way. Then we're going to take our SATA cable. It will attach here to the back of the drive, and then we're going to attach it specifically, and this is pretty important. There are 4 SATA ports on the motherboard. This red one you should probably stay clear of because it is in series with the eSATA port on the back of the machine. So if you use this, you risk disabling the eSATA port on the back of the machine. Then there's the black port here, which is on a separate channel designed really for like the optical. But these 2 blues are the high-speed SATA that are designed for the regular hard drives. This is SATA 0, that's SATA 1, so primary drive should probably go here, and secondary drive go there if you're going to use that. There actually are RAID capabilities on this motherboard as well. If you have a rather important operation, you might want to put 2 drives and mirror them or something of that nature. So I'm going to take this hard drive cable, the SATA cable, and get it set up here. You can see it's much larger than I actually need, so I'm actually going to be tying it together as well. This cable came with the motherboard. They give you ample cables here, so I'll be right back. So now we've got everything in place. We're going to go ahead and do a full power test. There's an interesting case in that the power receptacle is actually on the front of the machine. The idea being that there really is not going to be a front or a back. You're just going to strap this up behind a LCD monitor, and so you're not really going to care too much. On the back of the unit we have all the multitude of ports, more than we could probably ever need. We've got a couple of USB 3s, but by the way should not be used for connecting your keyboard to. Stick with the USB 2s. There are 2 here and 2 over here. And then we've got our LAN connector, DVI. We've got a eSATA here, and we've got HDMI and display ports over here. So we have 3 digital connectors. And this unit is designed to have the primary connector be the HDMI. So if you want to use 2 monitors, use the HDMI for the first monitor, DVI for the second monitor. You'll want to get a little inexpensive HDMI to DVI converter if you want to have 2 digital displays. And then it's got multitude of audio outputs and inputs and what have you, and even an optical here if you really want to get into some of that hi-fi stuff. You want to use this as a media server or something of that nature. So we're going to go ahead and power this up. The power button is over here on the front. We see the power indicator come on. That's good. See the hard drive light also come on, which means we've got our things in the right space. You can't really see it much, but you can sort of see the cycles of the fan moving. So we have nothing in the way. Surprisingly quiet. So that's good. And then if we look in the back, or actually I'm sorry, the front, we can actually feel that both of these fans are moving. And again, surprisingly quiet. So we've got all 3 fans currently fired up and working as expected, which means we're probably good to go ahead and put the case on. Once having the case on and attaching it to an LCD display, it would look kind of like this, where we've got really everything's kind of nice and compact behind an LCD screen and pretty clean. And that's it. So now we have our machine built, ready to go and load our operating system or what have you.